This presentation is going to be on the factors governing the demand for a good. The learning outcomes. By the end of this presentation, students should be able to 1. Define what is meant by the demand, 2. List at least 2 factors governing the demand of a good, and 3. State whether that factor will cause a movement along or a shift of the demand curve. My rationale for choosing this topic is because it is an essential part of the demand chapter which is common to both higher and ordinary level. It commonly appears as part of the Section B, Question 1 long question in the Leaving Certificate exam, and it shows students the basic concept of demand and makes them more economically aware of the world around them. So what is demand? Demand might mean a number of different things. In economics, we define demand as the number of units of a good which consumers are willing to purchase at any given market price at any given time. So today we're going to look at what might change a person's demand for a good. There are many different factors governing the demand for a good. So you have the price of the good itself, the person's income, you have the price of other goods, you also have the person's taste, the consumer's future expectations, and we have the unforeseen circumstances. But for today we're just going to look at the first two. The first factor affecting demand that I'm going to look at is the price of the good itself. So set a base price and quantity as point B or P2, Q2. If price was to increase to P1, there will be fall in quantity demanded to Q1, or point A, so that will cause a movement along the demand curve. Similarly, if price was to fall to point P3, then there will be an increase in quantity demanded for this good. It will go to the point Q3. So that will be a movement along the demand curve as well from point B to C. So therefore, only the price of the good itself will cause a movement along the demand curve. The next factor affecting demand I'm going to look at is the person's income. A person's income can have many different effects on the demand depending on what type of good it is. So you have normal, inferior and different goods. Today we're going to look at the effect income has on the demand of normal and inferior goods. So normal goods then. So what is it? A normal good is one that as income increases, so too does the good's demand. So a normal good is said to have a positive relationship with demand. So when we talk about the demand curve for a normal good, so we'll start by looking at the curve D1. So that states when price is 4, this person can afford to buy 20 units of that good. So let's say this person gets an additional income. So he starts playing guitar. So his when price is 4, he can now afford to buy 40 units of that good. So causing a shift in demand. So that move from point A to A dash. So let's say the opposite happened. He lost his job singing. So now he's going to have a decrease in income. So now he'll shift back to the original curve. So he'll only be able to afford to buy 20 units of the good when price is 4. So that'll cause a shift inward in the demand curve. So if you remember then, normal goods have a positive relationship with demand. So now the opposite will happen. Inferior goods have a negative relationship with demand. So inferior goods then, so what are they? So basically an inferior good is a good that as our income goes up, we buy less of. So like Penneys clothes. So when we have more income, we'll buy less clothes from Penneys. So as income goes up, we'll have more disposable income. So instead of buying Penneys clothes, someone might buy Tommy Hilfiger clothes instead. Similarly, if we have less income, we might shift away from buying Tommy Hilfiger clothes to go back to buy Penneys clothes because we have less disposable income. So let's look at this person's demand for an inferior good. So this person's original demand for an inferior good is the curve D1. So she buys 20 t-shirts for €4 a year. So this may mean she has a high income and the rest of her income has been used to buy Tommy Hilfiger clothes. So let's say now she has a fall in her income. So this means her demand for Penneys clothes will rise. Thus there will be a shift in demand for inferior goods. So the demand curve will shift from D1 to D2. The shift outwards in the demand curve from D1 to D2 means that she forgoes her spending on Tommy Hilfiger because she can only afford to buy the Penneys clothes. So the quantity demanded of Penneys clothes shifts from 20 to 40. So teaching methodologies. So what different teaching methods can we use to teach this topic? So the first one I thought of was presentation. So we could break the students up into small groups and assign them a factor affecting demand each. So then the students would have to come up to the top of the class and present each topic. So the next teaching methodology we could use is the jigsaw method. So this involves breaking the students up into small groups of 3 or 4 and assign each group a factor that affects demand. They then all swap groups and teach their peers what they know about each factor affecting demand. So the last two that I could think of then maybe questionnaires and discussions. So at the end of the topic, maybe you could break the students up in small groups and do a quiz or a questionnaire. And then for discussion, before you start the topic, you might ask the students what they think would happen to demand, or what they already know. So the cross-curricular links. So how does this topic tie in with other subjects? So you might notice there's quite a few graphs in this topic, so maybe this could tie in with technical graphics, or maybe maths or sciences when they have to draw out graphs. So this topic has cross-curricular links with the business syllabus when dealing with the entrepreneur. So it might help students understand the consumer they're selling to. Also looks at home economics when we talk about the consumer studies. So literacy and numeracy. Both of these can be easily worked on within this topic. So literacy can be worked on by keeping a list of all the key words, or sometimes you could ask students to write a short summary of each factor affecting demand. So numeracy can also be worked on easily. All the graphs work on the basis that there's a change in either the quantity demanded or the price. So these are given in the form of a number. So we could ask students to find how much of a difference there was between the increase or the decrease in price or quantity demanded. So the learning outcomes again. So hopefully you're after learning the definition of demand, at least 2 factors governing demand of a good, so the price of the good itself and a person's income, and finally you should be able to state whether that factor will cause a movement along or a shift in the demand curve.
Created using Powtoon.